My fiancée demanded I take out a loan for her dream wedding, so I called off the engagement and watched karma destroy her perfect plans. My family wasn't rich, but we weren't struggling either. My dad ran an auto repair shop, and my mom worked part-time at the local diner while keeping us kids in line. They were old-school, salt-of-the-earth kinds of people. My dad used to say, "You don't spend money you don't have, and you don't borrow unless you're out of options." Mom was the same. If we couldn't afford something, we didn't need it. No whining, no shortcuts, just hard work and patience. By the time I graduated high school, I had a couple of thousand saved up, which felt like a fortune at 18. College wasn't a big flashy deal for me either. I went to a state school nearby while working part-time at a hardware store to cover my expenses. My degree was in information technology, nothing glamorous, but it got me a steady job as a network technician after graduation. It wasn't the kind of job that makes people go, "Wow," but it paid well, and I didn't dread going to work. Now I'll admit my dating life was nothing to write home about. I'd had a few girlfriends over the years, but nothing serious. Most of them wanted to move to the city or live a lifestyle I couldn't and didn't want to afford. That was fine by me. I figured the right person would come eventually, someone who liked the same simple life I did. I met her at a friend's house. My buddy Jake had just moved into a new place and threw a little get-together to celebrate. I wasn't planning to meet anyone that day. I showed up in a flannel shirt and jeans, carrying a six-pack of soda, just looking to hang out with my friends. Tina walked in like she owned the place, wearing a flowy dress and sunglasses that looked like they cost more than my truck. She had this air about her, like she was used to being noticed. I remember thinking she was way out of my league, but somehow, we ended up talking. It turned out she was Jake's girlfriend's co-worker visiting from the city. I don't even remember how the conversation started, but I do remember being surprised at how easy it was to talk to her. She wasn't as intimidating as she seemed. She laughed at my jokes and said she liked how laid back I was. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. Tina seemed different from the other women I dated. She told me she was tired of the city and loved how real everything felt in my town. She said she admired how I didn't try to impress anyone, and how I seemed to know exactly what I wanted out of life. For a while, I believed her. Tina started visiting more often. She loved the quiet mornings when we'd sit on my porch drinking coffee, and she didn't seem to mind that I lived in a small, no-frills apartment. She even came fishing with me a couple of times, though she wasn't great at it. She laughed at herself when she tangled the line or dropped the bait, and I thought, this is it. She gets me. We dated for 2 years, and during that time, I thought everything was perfect. Sure, Tina had her moments. She'd occasionally complain about how boring the town was or how she missed her favorite sushi place in the city, but she always followed it up with something like, "But it's worth it to be with you." To be honest, I should have seen the cracks forming. For example, Tina would always joke about how she couldn't wait for me to get a better truck. She'd laugh and say, "Imagine us pulling up to a fancy restaurant in this thing." At the time, I thought it was just her sense of humor. Now I wonder if it was a hint of what was coming. Then there was the way she'd talk about her life before we met. She'd drop casual comments about the designer clothes her parents used to buy her, or the fancy vacations she took. For example, she insisted we go to the nicest restaurant in town for our 1-year anniversary, even though she knew I was saving for a down payment on a house. Or when she rolled her eyes at the off-brand watch I bought her for her birthday, even though she said she loved it. Still, I ignored the red flags. I thought we balanced each other out, me being practical and her being more adventurous. I figured that's what relationships were about, meeting in the middle. So when I decided to propose, I wanted it to reflect us, or at least what I thought us was. I thought it captured Tina perfectly. Classy but understated. The proposal itself was simple, just like I knew Tina would want. I took her out to the lake where we'd gone fishing on one of our first dates. It was a quiet, sunny afternoon, and we were sitting on the dock with our feet dangling over the water. I pulled out the ring, said a few heartfelt words, and asked her to marry me. I really thought I'd nailed it. Everything about the moment felt perfect, simple, heartfelt, and meaningful. She'd always said she loved that about me, how I didn't need to make a big show of things. So when she teared up and said yes, hugging me like she never wanted to let go, I felt like the luckiest guy alive. "It's perfect," she said again and again. "No one else has anything like this. You really get me." The first week after the proposal was like living in a dream. Tina was telling all her friends about how thoughtful I was and how much the ring meant to her. I'd catch her snapping pictures of it on her hand, sharing them with her best friends, and smiling like a kid who just got their favorite toy. She'd hug me out of nowhere and say things like, "You're amazing, you know that?" It made me feel like I'd done everything right. But then slowly, little things started to make me wonder. I'd assumed she'd be just as excited to show them as she was with everyone else, but she didn't even bring it up when her mom asked, "So let's see the ring." Tina hesitated, her hand instinctively going to her lap. "Oh, it's not really, she started before finally holding it up with a forced smile. Her mom examined it, tilting her head. "It's nice. Very different," she said. Tina quickly replied, "It's unique, you know. Not your typical diamond." Her dad didn't even look up from his steak, but her mom gave me a tight smile and said, "Well, if you two are happy, that's all that matters." Tina didn't say much after that, and the ride home was quiet. I asked her if everything was okay, and she shrugged it off. "Yeah, it's just my mom. She's always weird about stuff like that." I didn't push it, but it nagged at me. Why did it feel like she was embarrassed? Then there was the local community center I suggested for the wedding. It's a beautiful space that's affordable and has a lot of character. I thought it would be perfect for us. Big enough to fit all our family and friends, but not so massive that it felt over the top. Plus, it had these gorgeous wooden beams and big windows that let in tons of natural light. I brought Tina to see it one Saturday, thinking she'd love it. She walked around politely, nodding at all the details I pointed out, but her excitement wasn't there. "What do you think?" I asked, trying to gauge her reaction. "It's nice," she said after a pause, but there was a hint of hesitation in her voice that she couldn't hide. "Just nice?" I pressed, laughing a little to lighten the mood. She shrugged. "I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's just, I don't know. It's not what I imagined, you know? But if it's what works, then that's fine." I felt a pang of disappointment. I'd been so sure this place would be perfect. Tina's lukewarm response made me second-guess myself. Still, I told myself it was just a matter of adjusting expectations. Maybe she would warm up to the idea once we started planning more details. After all, Tina kept telling me she loved how I kept things grounded and practical. That was part of what brought us together, or so I thought. There were other moments that revealed little cracks in the perfect image she had presented. One evening, while we were hanging out with her friends, one of them asked to see the ring. Tina held out her hand, and her friend gushed about how unique it was. "Oh my gosh, it's so you!" her friend exclaimed. Tina smiled, but it was more subdued than usual. "Yeah, he really put a lot of thought into it," she said, her tone off, as if she was trying to sound enthusiastic but wasn't quite pulling it off. It felt like she was playing along for my benefit, and it left me with a gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. I brushed it off, figuring that maybe I was overthinking things. Wedding planning is stressful, right? Maybe she just had a lot on her plate. But as time went on, those little moments added up. Tina would rave about the ring and the proposal to some people, but downplay it with others, like she was trying to manage expectations depending on who she was talking to. I remember overhearing her on the phone with her sister one night. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I caught snippets of the conversation. "Yeah, it's different," she said in a low voice. "Not what I expected, but no, I mean it's fine. He really tried, and that's what matters, right?" That stung. I had thought she genuinely loved the ring and everything it represented, but hearing her talk about it like that made me wonder if she was just putting on a show for me. At the time, I didn't know what to make of it. I wanted to believe she was just dealing with pressure from her family or friends, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Tina wasn't being entirely honest about how she felt. The thing is, she never outright complained. She didn't demand a different ring or insist we booked some extravagant venue, but there was a subtle, unspoken disappointment that I couldn't ignore. It was in the way she hesitated when someone asked about the ring, the way she looked around the community center like she was forcing herself to see potential, and the way she always seemed to deflect when I asked her what she wanted. At that time, I chalked it up to nerves or stress. After all, planning a wedding is a big deal, and Tina had always seemed so supportive of my practical approach to life. I figured we'd work through it together. But now I wonder if those little moments were warning signs of what was to come, even if Tina wasn't ready to say them out loud. Then, little by little, things started to shift. It began with the guest list. I had assumed we'd keep it small, just close family and friends, maybe 50 people tops. Tina and I both come from pretty big families, but I thought we could find a way to pare it down. When I brought it up, Tina seemed on board. "Yeah, that sounds good," she said. "We don't need a massive crowd. It's about us, not anyone else." Great, I thought. We're on the same page. But a week later, she handed me a rough draft of the guest list, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. It had over 200 names on it. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the list. "It's just a starting point," Tina said, smiling as if she hadn't just quadrupled our head count. "Tina, this is 4 times the number we talked about." She shrugged. "I couldn't leave anyone out. I mean, my parents have a lot of friends, and they'd be offended if we didn't invite them. And then there are my co-workers, plus some of my college friends." I frowned. "Do you even talk to half these people?" "Not all the time," she admitted, "but it would be rude not to invite them. Plus, the more people we invite, the more gifts we get, right?" She laughed like it was a joke, but I wasn't so sure. "Gifts aren't the point, Tina," I said. "We can't afford a wedding for 200 people. We'll figure it out," she said breezily. "It's not like everyone will show up anyway." I let it go for the moment, thinking we'd revisit the list and trim it down later. But deep down, I started to feel like I was losing control of the wedding plans. Then there was the venue. After the lukewarm reaction to the community center, Tina began showing me pictures of other places. Ones that looked like they belonged in a movie, not a small town. Wedding planning was starting to feel overwhelming. Tina showed me pictures of potential venues on her phone. One was a vineyard with sprawling gardens and chandeliers in the ballroom. Another was a fancy downtown hotel with a rooftop terrace offering stunning city views. "I know, but don't you think it would be amazing to get married somewhere like this? It's our wedding. It should feel special." Tina gave me a tight smile. "I know, I just want it to be memorable, that's all." I could tell she wasn't completely satisfied, but she didn't push it further. That night, however, the seed of her dream wedding had been planted. As the weeks went by, her expectations kept creeping up. First, it was the guest list and the venue. Then it was the food. One evening, I suggested a buffet as a more affordable catering option. "It's casual, and people can pick what they like," I explained. "Buffets are so casual," she wrinkled her nose. "Don't you think a plated dinner would be nicer?" "Sure, if we could afford it," I replied, "but a sit-down dinner for 200 people would cost a fortune." "We don't have to go overboard," she insisted. "Just a couple of courses, maybe steak or salmon." "Tina, do you know how much that would cost?" I asked, feeling frustrated. The same went for the entertainment. I suggested hiring a local DJ who could play our favorite songs, but Tina wanted a live band. "DJs are fine for a birthday party," she said, "but this is a wedding. A live band would make it so much more elegant." "Do you know how expensive live bands are?" I sighed. "It's just an idea," she said, her tone softening. "I'm not saying we have to do it, but wouldn't it be nice?" Every conversation felt like this, her suggesting something extravagant, and me reminding her we couldn't afford it. She always said she understood, but I could tell she was disappointed. It wasn't anything she said outright, but rather in how her smile would falter, or how she'd change the subject. The turning point came when Tina casually mentioned hiring a wedding planner. "I think it would help take some of the stress off us," she said one night over dinner. "Tina, wedding planners are expensive," I reminded her. "But they save you money in the long run," she argued. "They know how to negotiate with vendors and stuff. I think we can handle it ourselves," I replied. "It's not like we're planning a royal wedding." Tina gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "I just don't want to feel overwhelmed," she said quietly. I felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe I was being too rigid. Tina had a demanding job, and I knew she wanted the wedding to be special. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that her idea of special was drifting further away from what we'd originally talked about. The final straw, at least for this chapter, came when I caught her scrolling through pictures of engagement rings on her phone. I teased her, peeking over her shoulder. She quickly locked the screen and gave me a nervous laugh. "No, just browsing," she said, trying to brush it off. "Browsing for what?" I asked, confused. "Nothing," she replied hurriedly. I didn't press her, but it stuck with me. Later that night, when she went to the bathroom, I couldn't resist sneaking a peek at her phone. The search history was full of diamond engagement rings and articles on how to upgrade your engagement ring. I had spent months saving for her ring, believing it was exactly what she wanted. She had told me how much she loved it, how thoughtful and unique it was. Now it felt like she was secretly looking for something bigger and flashier. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it was hard to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. This was the moment I started to realize that the Tina I thought I knew, the one who loved my small-town values and didn't care about material things, might not have been entirely real. As time went on, Tina's true colors became harder and harder to ignore, starting with the bridal party. Initially, Tina had told me she wanted her bridesmaids to pick their own dresses within a certain color scheme. I thought that was thoughtful and practical. She had always said she didn't want to burden her friends financially, but apparently that plan didn't last long. One night she came home with a handful of bridal magazines and a Pinterest board full of ideas. "Look at these," she said excitedly, shoving the magazines in my face. I flipped through the pages, noticing the designer labels on every dress. "These are nice," I said hesitantly, "but they look expensive." "Well, yeah," Tina replied, as if it were obvious. "They're Vera Wang. You can't go wrong with a classic designer dress for you or the bridesmaids." I asked Tina, already sensing where this was headed. "For the bridesmaids?" I inquired. She shrugged, saying it casually like it was no big deal. "Those dresses are going to cost hundreds of dollars each. Are you sure your friends can afford that?" I pressed. She shrugged again. "They'll figure it out. It's one day, and it's important to me that everything looks cohesive. Plus, they'll have a beautiful dress they can wear again." I replied, "Tina, most people don't wear bridesmaid dresses again. It's not exactly practical." She rolled her eyes. "Why do you always have to be so negative? It's my wedding, and this is what I want. They'll understand." I didn't argue further, but the whole situation left a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't just about the money, it was the way she seemed to expect her friends to bend over backward for her, no matter what. The next blow came with the bachelorette party. I thought she'd do something simple, like a night out with her friends or a weekend at a cabin, but Tina had other ideas. "We're going to Miami," she announced one evening, grinning from ear to ear. "Miami?" I repeated, stunned. "Yeah, a long weekend on the beach with my girls. It'll be so much fun." "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "Well, yeah," she laughed, "but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. They'll understand." "Did you talk to your friends about it?" "Not yet," she admitted, "but I already booked the villa." "Tina, what if some of them can't afford it?" "Then they're not real friends," she said flatly. "If they cared about me, they'd make it work." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Tina I thought I knew, the one who had said she loved my simple, practical approach to life. It was like she'd transformed into someone who cared more about appearances and extravagance than the people around her. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, Tina sat me down and told me she'd been talking to her parents about the wedding budget. I braced myself, knowing this conversation wasn't going to go well. "It's not like we can't pay it off later. It's just to make sure everything is perfect." "You're being so selfish," she snapped. "This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and you're acting like it's a chore." That hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe she was pulling the "if you loved me" card over something as ridiculous as taking out a loan for a wedding. I'd made my stance clear, and I wasn't going to let her guilt me into changing my mind. "Don't you think you could loosen up a little?" Becca didn't have much to say after that, but I could tell she didn't agree with me. The kind, supportive, down-to-earth Tina I thought I knew had been replaced by someone who cared more about appearances and status than the life we were supposed to be building together. Things were already on thin ice between me and Tina, but what happened next completely shattered whatever was left. The tension from all her demands and our fights had been building, but I still thought we might be able to work through it. I was wrong. She was overly sweet about inviting me, saying things like, "It's just a casual dinner. My parents want to talk about the wedding plans. Nothing serious." I should have trusted my gut. When I walked into their house that night, I could tell immediately that something was up. Her mom and dad were sitting in the living room with these overly polite smiles plastered on their faces. Tina's dad, a guy who rarely said 2 words to me before, suddenly acted like he was all buddy-buddy. "Ah, there he is," he said, clapping me on the back. I gave a small smile, unsure of where this was going. It was awkward, but I chalked it up to wedding stress. After about 20 minutes, Tina's dad cleared his throat and leaned forward. "So, Tina's told us about some of the financial disagreements you two have been having." I glanced at Tina, confused. She gave me this tight-lipped smile like she was trying to encourage me to play along. Yeah," I said. "We've been talking about the budget. I think we just have different ideas about how much we want to spend," I said slowly. "But I don't think starting a marriage in debt is the best way to reflect that commitment." Her mom chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Oh, but isn't it worth it to make Tina happy?" She's always dreamed of a beautiful wedding. Don't you want to give her that? I could feel my blood starting to boil. Of course I wanted her to be happy, I said, but I also think we can have a beautiful wedding without spending money we don't have. Tina and I talked about having a simple, meaningful wedding, and that's what I thought we both wanted. Tina finally spoke up, her voice soft and almost pleading. Babe, it's not about jeopardizing our future. It's about making memories, starting our life together in a way we can look back on and feel proud of. I turned to her, trying to keep my voice steady. Tina, I want those things too, but I don't think we need to spend a fortune to have them. We can make memories without going into debt. With all due respect, I said, looking at her parents, this isn't about me not understanding. It's about priorities. I've worked hard to build a stable life, and I'm not going to throw that away for something we don't need. If that's not good enough for Tina or for you, then maybe we need to reevaluate what this wedding is really about. I'm saying, I replied, my voice firm, that I'm not going to be bullied into doing something I don't want. No, Tina, I'm not, I replied, turning to face her. This has been building for weeks. You've been pushing for things you know I can't afford, and I tried to compromise, but it's never enough. I can't do this anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't back down. If having your dream wedding is more important than building a life together, then maybe we're not right for each other, her mom hissed, but Tina just stared at me, speechless. I grabbed my coat and turned to leave. I think it's best if we take some time to think about what we really want, I said. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. She didn't reply right away, but later that evening, she sent me a long message saying how hurt she was and how she couldn't believe I was giving up on us. I didn't respond. I knew there was no point. This wasn't about giving up. It was about refusing to be manipulated into something I didn't believe in. Standing my ground wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. I might have lost Tina, but I kept my dignity and my future, and honestly, that was worth a whole lot more than any wedding. I set the record straight with anyone who asked, but I didn't go out of my way to defend myself. People who really knew me wouldn't believe her nonsense anyway. According to one of my buddies, Tina had been bragging about how Eric was willing to give her the life she deserved. Lily asked, a knowing smirk on her face. But when she started demanding an even bigger budget and throwing fits over minor details, Eric had had enough. He called off the wedding, Lily said, clearly trying not to laugh. And get this, he didn't just end the engagement, he dumped her entirely. Lily leaned in closer like she was sharing a juicy secret. He's been telling everyone he was a jerk and that he led her on, but between you and me, she did this to herself. It was exactly the kind of place I'd always dreamed of. Quiet, peaceful, and mine. Every now and then, I'd hear snippets about Tina through mutual friends. Apparently, she was struggling to find someone willing to meet her sky-high expectations. Looking back, I'm grateful for everything that happened. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I felt like giving in just to keep the peace. But standing my ground taught me an important lesson. Love isn't about bending over backward to meet someone else's unrealistic demands. It's about mutual respect, compromise, and building a life together. She could bully and guilt me into giving her what she wanted, but in the end, she only revealed who she truly was. Honestly, I'm thankful for that. Sometimes you have to go through tough experiences to discover what really matters. For me, that meant walking away from Tina and choosing to prioritize my own happiness and values.